I never see the threat too soon. The blood on the bandage, the ghost in the room. Got a canvas as wide as the moon. But when I see it at night, it's a sickening blue. I was thinking people never change, but there's a new taste of dread that I cannot explain. And the thoughts that make up my life get reflected in others from time to time. Now I've got another question, and if we run out of time, can we make
Welcome to the 2-Month Review, the weekly podcast brought to you by Open Letter and 3%, in which we take one giant book, break it down section by section, bit by bit, talk about it, analyze it, read it, have fun, make a lot of jokes. This season we are reading JR by William Gaddis, and we're in the penultimate episode of this season, up to page 703. Next week will be the end of JR. I'm Chad Post. I'm Chad Post, brought to you by Open Letter, pretty much. I suppose that's true. I'm joined as always by Brian Wood, author of Joytime Killbox.
Hi, Chad. So good to see you. You look like you've been through hell or something. What's going on?
Well, no, I mean, I just didn't go to work today. I taught at home.
Okay, got it. This is my baseline. I apologize then.
Teaching from home means don't take a shower.
Yeah.
I've got sweatpants on.
Yeah, are you pregnant? No, I'm not. Are you sure? You look a little.
I got leukemia.
Oh.
I always have to make it about you, don't you? Always just something that's about you. Leukemia. It's a good leukemia. And we're joined a special guest, Kaija Straumanis, editor at Open Letter Books, translator from the Latvian and German. Yeah.
That's kind of it.
How are you? How's winter treating you?
Which one of us?
You, Kaija. I don't care.
It's really great. I've been shoveling a little, which is something I haven't done since I was a teenager, I think. Any activity I try to bring the toddler outside to do, he does it for like 2 minutes and then it's just like, can we just eat this shit? Like, he doesn't want to do anything or build anything. I built a snowman for him once and he just wanted to pile drive it, and then eat it. But yeah, it's really winter's great. I'm from Minnesota, so this is nothing.
Oh, hey there, I got this. Yeah. So it got down to 20-something here in Atlanta, and everybody had a stay-at-home order where they couldn't, like, you shouldn't go to work or be on the streets for at least, like, 2 hours. Everybody was 2 to 3 hours late, allowed to be 2 to 3 hours late because it went under 30 degrees.
Oh, my God.
They're like, you can get 30 feet. Up by the Great Lakes, and people are just like, oh, a bit of a dumper,
Yeah, exactly. Like when the snowplows come through and plow your driveway closed, like I get a little excited, like, oh, will they or won't they make it out into the world today? Like it's an adventure.
Well, it's been hell on the Jordans and the Balenciaga sneakers down here, but we'll make do. We'll be all right.
I tried to pull out of my driveway. Yesterday I went to go to work, and the neighbors to our right were trying to shovel out their tiny little red Miata sort of car that was stuck at the end of the driveway. And so I was like, oh man, I'm not going to help them. Fuck them. I'm going to do my own. I'm going to just do it. I'm just going to go. And I backed out, boom, immediately hit like a snow thing, slid sideways and completely got stuck, and was like, son of a bitch. Like now I look just like an asshole. And then I shovel myself out. I wasn't helping them. And as I went out to get the shovel, this guy in a kilt and a top hat comes out of his car, and I was like, oh yeah, I thought I could make it, but I didn't. I was like laughing. He's like, you need better back visibility, and went and scraped off the back of window of my car, and was like, dude, what I need is to get the fuck out of this driveway, and you need to go home. Like,
just training for the Highland Games.
I'm good at throwing my wife, dude.
He just leaves a trail of like rainbow dust behind him.
Where's your pot of gold, leprechaun?
Yeah, you're like, do I go to work or do I tail this guy?
He was so mad at me for like having snow on my back window.
So wait, it's been a couple weeks. I feel like I'm disconnected. Like anything new or fun in the publishing world? That's anything fun going on? I haven't gone to any websites. I haven't looked at anything. I'm out of the loop on everything. I love it.
Bookstore sales for 2020 were down 28.8%.
Is that a lot?
Sounds like a big number.
It sounds like it's more
8%. I'd be pretty happy about it. So
28. That's more than a quarter, I think. So yeah, that seems like a lot.
Yeah, that's not good. There's Winter Institute is going on right now.
Do they have? I mean, obviously, pandemic. But why do they think it's gone down?
Mostly that.
Okay. Because people are buying toilet paper and cat litter on Amazon and not books.
There's no paper left to print things on.
No, like the Amazon sales, I think are higher. It's just that in the bookstores,
actual bookstores,
and the ones that didn't have delivery, didn't have online presence. There was also like a lack of I don't know if this is in the article, but this is just my thinking out loud. I don't remember there being like a bigger, like the big books that come along where everyone's like, oh, everyone read blank during June or July. The only one that I can think of is Obama's biography. And that most of it was sold through Amazon as well.
And he just happened to be on every podcast and interview on every TV show and news program for a week leading up to it as well. It kind of helps, right?
$45 volume 1.
Good Lord.
I mean,
his books are as long as his speeches. Come on.
You know what's super funny? I never heard a review or comment about his biography after it came out.
They have the bookmarks on LitHub. That's all you need to know. It'll give you those little flags if it's great or panned.
I mean, how can you say anything really? Like, doesn't he just get a free pass?
If he doesn't, but I would want to know like if there's some juicy gossip in there.
But you're
way too
right.
measured and diplomatic. Are you kidding me? He's like.
Everyone was really excited about Michelle's book, and that was that was read by everyone and talked about by everyone.
Did we dish on the servants at the White House?
Yeah.
Like my mom doesn't read much nonfiction, and even she bought Michelle Obama's book and read it. It has that kind of a presence that that to me seemed like more of an event than his memoir.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Other than that, right now Winter Institute's going on for all the independent bookstores, but it's virtual. AWP is about to start.
I didn't even think about that. Like that's not even on my radar.
Yeah, it starts next week.
Okay.
Or the week after, March 3rd, whenever that is. I don't know.
Oh, that's so sad. I'm usually like super excited and stoked and seeing what's happening, who's speaking, what I don't care about any of that right now.
How is that going to happen? Is it just all going to be virtual?
I asked yesterday because we got money from them for not going last year in 2020, and you could apply it to this year or defer it to next year to when it's in person again. And so we deferred it. So I don't think we're doing a single thing related to AWP, except for the fact that Andre Snar Magnuson, his book on Time and Water, he's doing a talk through AWP.
That's one of those ones where I can, that's a touchstone moment if you're, I think, in the literary world, because the whole thing was I wouldn't say it's controversy, but showing up or not showing. Well, it was controversial. Showing up or not showing up. Why did they have it versus canceling it? And I was kind of on the fence of I don't know, probably should cancel it, but I don't know. They already did it. And looking back now in hindsight, oh, can't cancel that. Are you kidding me? What do you think? Right? I was completely wrong and uninformed on my opinions of it. I kept it to myself, but when I was at the house, just thinking I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't go. I wasn't going to go, and I wouldn't go. But I mean, yeah, if they want to have it, they can still have it. But knowing what we know now, clearly,
I don't think it made much of a difference. I don't think it was that big of a. I don't think that there was a huge number of people from AWP that ended up with COVID. I went to fucking UK, right there, same time, and everyone's getting sick around. I didn't kill anyone.
I'm positive you had COVID when you came back from Spain, because I was calling. My wife was saying, "You need to call Chad, have him take his temperature, and see if he's breathing." Okay, I will. Hey, Chad, are you breathing? Yeah. I can breathe.
fine.
I think that's breathing. I don't know.
Good.
I'm positive you had it.
Anyway, so Kaija, this is your first time on in a while. What is your general take on JR? How did you come to read William Gaddis? What's your JR story?
My JR story is that you told me I should read it, or you recommended it. I don't remember how or why that came about.
And you listened to me?
I mean, not for like the first few years. Like I let it sort of marinate for a while. But I remember, I think I brought it with me to Latvia the one summer I was there when I rented the apartment and just like worked for a couple of weeks. And I definitely didn't open it a single time. I just brought it with me, and it was just this like, it was no, I don't think it was this copy. I think it was the other one, the tan one. Yeah. I just like lugged it around, and then I didn't read it. And I don't remember why, but for whatever reason, I decided to get the audiobook because it had been on my list. It's over 700 pages, and I had already become well versed in the world of listening to audiobooks while running or, exercising or going on car trips and things like that. And I started listening to it, and also packing up mail at the office. I started listening to it, and like I listened to it. That's what I did. I got the audiobook, and it was one of the best audiobook experiences I've ever had. And that's why when you guys announced that you're going to do the book for the podcast, I was like, oh, I'm going to read the physical copy now, because that's a different experience. And like, I can't remember, some of the parts where they have the handwritten notes or the little diagrams. I don't remember if those were referenced in any way or if they were talked about or just sort of glossed over. But I can hear, like, I swear I can still hear every single character voice that this character, the voice actor does. And it's made it such an interesting and like almost funnier experience the second time around, because I've heard someone embody these characters and kind of give it those pauses in the sentences, like when JR talks and puts in like and hey all the time, and like,
man, hey man, hey
Holy,
like, let's hear subsidiary. I mean, holy shit, Mr. Bast. Yeah, like it's.
I like that. You do that well.
It was great. It was so great. I love it. And so that was my first experience. And then I want to say it was a book that I crossed off on a poster or one of those 100
I've done that 100 thing
reads. Which if it was, that was probably the more driving motivation than Chad recommending a book, is that if I get to physically take a coin and scratch it off of a scratch off poster, that's way more validating than telling Chad that I listened to an opinion of his.
Oh yeah, that for sure. For sure.
What about baseline, like, I wouldn't say like thumbs up, thumbs down. It sounds like it's a thumbs up kind of a experience for you. What did you like about the book? I mean, you're crazy well read. You read a bunch of stuff. Like, what would you say separates this one from other things when you're piling books together and thinking about?
It's because it is almost entirely dialogue, and that's something where both when I was in writing classes, so I got my BA in creative writing, and even in translating, like that was something that I always felt I paid a lot of attention to, because not just because the professors told us, be careful about dialogue, but I got really into the idea of making dialogue as authentic as possible, which, I mean, in terms of editing is partially why when someone says okay in speech, I really, really prefer to edit it to be okay-ay, because that's the phonetic, so little things like that. But I got really into the idea of making dialogue as authentic as possible, both when you're writing it yourself and when you're translating it. And I just love that about this, because it's maybe one of the most natural sounding dialogues ever. starting from the very beginning when the aunts are talking and kind of talking over each other and talking over the lawyer, and at the end when you have this 12-year-old when JR is talking to Bast and just being like, here's all this knowledge I've amassed, and here's this litany of Wall Street that I've amassed. Hey, are you paying attention? Like, man, like I do all this stuff for you and you just louse it up and like, hey, holy shit, Mr. Bast, like, oh, like I got this really nice, like, what he didn't call it portfolio, but like attaché or briefcase, and like, you get to go to this fancy dinner, and like, hey, I mean, I never once got to, and like, it's just, it's the litany of reality, and it's so good. It's so good.
So last night I decided to listen to the audiobook for because I hadn't read it. I was behind on everything. We had an NEA grant this week. It's all chaos. So I listened to it instead of reading it over the past day and a half, and I listened to just that section. Holy shit. The guy, Nick Sullivan, he emailed through his website as I was listening to it. Literally, my email says, I'll tell you because it's right here. My email that I wrote late at night says, Nick, I'm listening to your audio performance and holy fucking shit. I was like, I have a host of podcast. Will you come on and talk about our final episode of JR next week? And he said yes. So knock on wood, I believe that he's going to come on next week to talk about the performance. But he has a different voice for every character, which I mean, I can't imagine, like, Brian, you do, I'm sure you do this too. Do voices for shit that you read to your daughter. And Alex is really into Spider-Man comics right now, like these kid versions. And so I have to invent voices for every bad guy. And
is he in the Miles Morales?
It's called Marvel Superhero Adventures. It's like for young kids. So Miles Morales is part of it, but it's regular Spider-Man, or Peter Parker Spider-Man, Miles Morales. Sometimes Captain Marvel's in there. Gwen Stacy will be in there as Ghost Spider. All these people, and trying to create all those voices and remember which one is which is like impossible when there's like more than 4 characters in the story. And this guy's thing is like everyone has its own like unique sort of bit to it. So Bast sounds like Bast. Gibbs is different. Eigen's different. In the section, Rhoda is hilarious.
Yeah, Rhoda is
great. Oh man, she sounds like a Janice from Muppets.
Yeah, she does. She really does.
Like, hey man, what are you doing, man? Why are you doing that? I'm just getting in my bath, man. Why are you touching me there, man? Like, don't put your hand on me there, man. What are you doing? Like,
we can get into it more later.
Kitty.
Yeah, and both of you are probably much more well versed to speak to it, but like those parts remind me so much of Pynchon. I don't know why, but like the burnout, insanity, and entropy, like all intermingling, and the confusion feels so Pynchon-esque to me.
It's funny. I thought that this was the time, this section. So there are really only 3 scenes. There's 3 scenes in this section. I don't know about Stephen Moore's listing. There may be more breakdown scenes, but I haven't looked at it. But just like in general, there's Rhoda and Eigen in the apartment, and she's looking for Chairman Meow. And he's like he's like, you fuck everyone. You fuck this person. You fuck this
Shram. He's really upset about Shram.
Yeah.
I think it's because it's a writer competition, but we can get into that later. It's
you have sex with Gibbs, you have sex with all these people. Why don't I have sex with you?
Yeah.
Like, why not me? I get to, and then the U.S. Marshals and Gibbs show up, and they're like, hey, you're working this too? Like, look, who have we identified the principals? They're like, where's Greenspan? Where's Mr. Teets? Where's like the people? And he's like, you must be Mr. Teets. And Gibbs is like, what fucking people are talking about? Like,
he's like, this is just my place. Like some of this mail is mine.
I mean, it's such a great conversation because one is coked out of their face, the other is drunk and then coked out of their face, and so I'd say Gibbs is much more terrible. I mean, like they're both fringe on the fringe of just normal humanity, but Gibbs is so terrible and so awful. And their interaction is so interesting and pinpoint and perfect in the way it's written. I thought it was such a
Gibbs and Rhoda or Gibbs and Eigen?
Rhoda.
Eigen is the one who's
Eigen
there
and
at the
Rhoda.
beginning. Yeah.
Eigen and Rhoda, yeah. Eigen's one
Jealousy and trying to make moves on her, and she's like,
Yeah.
"You're wrong. What are you doing?" Like his sexual assault of her.
Exactly. That was where I thought I came in, whereas like, cool, this section starts out with sexual assault, like borderline heading into rape, and then
The raper.
and then Gibbs announces his leukemia. Is like, I got the happiest part of the book. This is great.
I couldn't stop laughing at the leukemia section, listening to it, because the voice is like Eigen's voice in the audiobook is like kind of proper and like restrained, and Gibbs is like a deeper, raspier sort of like fuck up sort of voice. But and he's like, yeah, I got back from the hospital and like I've got leukemia, and the Eigen character's like, why do you always have to make it about you, Gibbs? It's always about you. You just can't even do anything. Yeah, give you time to write. I give you the space to write. And what do you just make it all about a disease? Like, why aren't you even accomplish anything? It's like, dude, I got like fucking, like, you're right. Like, I'm fuck up, like, fucking leukemia. Like, I need leukemia. And he's like, no, you don't get leukemia as an excuse.
It's like Gibbs comes in to like enters into Eigen's sphere at this point where like Gibbs is living the life that Eigen would want to write about. And then he's like, then it's like a one-uppy where he's like, well, my wife walked out on me and I got them this apartment, and like my kid is like doesn't really like me anymore. Gibbs is like, yeah.
Eigen tells every person he can about his divorce. Like every single the marshal's like, we're here for the, my wife left me the other day, and like she took the kid, and I get to see him like once every 2 weeks. Like, are you aware? IRS is probably going to be here shortly. Like,
all right, I have a quick aside, a quick anecdote about why do you have to make it about you in terms of leukemia.
It's very specific. Good.
Well, I was when I first finished college, I was a manager of a Starbucks, and so one of the baristas was out because she was getting some treatment for a disease that she had. And I don't know, I guess she told people this or whatever, like HIPAA. I don't talk about any of that shit. Like whatever, keep it on the down low. But one of the other girls found out about it, and she was like, before Ariana Grande, she looked like Ariana Grande. She would wear little cat ears on her headband thing, and like really pretty and small. Like, it kind of looks like if a human being was a cupcake, like kind of like that, like super sweet and like good, whatever. And
a lot of pleats from the hips down.
She was so upset. Like imagine the person with like lots of makeup, lots of lipstick on, and she was so mad that this other lady was off of work to get treatment for a disease. And she's like, why does she get to leave? Because she has a disease. I have like 30 diseases. In front of all these people, there's a line of care. I've got like 30 diseases. Why does she make it about her? I'm here with all my diseases. And I'm just like, how did all these people get hired? What are we doing? It's like a leper colony around here. What's going on? Next, would you like a mocha? You want her to make it for you? But when I heard that, why do you have to make it about you? It made me think of this lady I worked with that apparently had 30 diseases.
30.
Make a game of contagion bingo.
I don't want to say too much, but I know someone who had mental health problems and wanted to check every box. that had depression and anxiety and schizophrenia and bipolar and yep. There's some people really, man.
It's interesting how I'm finding how, like, I don't like this word, but soaked. This book is so soaked in like toxic masculinity.
Moist. It's moist with toxic masculinity.
No. Gross.
No, he's talking about the Mormon thing where you put your
Mormon version of it.
And
we were at
you soak it. You just soak.
So we were at the aquarium today, and we went to the dolphin show. And the first 10 rows they said was the soak zone. And I leaned over to my wife and go, only morning. She goes, gross. She just goes, gross.
Gross.
I'm in the soak zone. No, so, this book feels like it's so.
That's someone's wet dream, man. That's someone's wet dream right there, is getting that soak zone.
Be in the front row at a dolphin show.
Yeah, it's so steamy. in this kind of like just terrible masculinity, right? Everybody's, woe is me, I'm divorced, oh, I'm a drunk writer, or they're just, check out that can, I want to grab it. Like just terrible, terrible, terrible men that I find the parts that have a more feminine role in them are really, to me, interesting and so different to the, like, it's such a nice contrast to the huge canvas of color that we're normally getting.
Related to that, one of the things that reminds me of is that when JR is talking to Bast, and Bast is like, listen to this. So the last scene that happens in the hotel, he's like, listen to Bach, and he's like, listen to this, and JR's like, whatever, man. It's like some person starts saying up yours, and then they sing up mine, and up yours, up mine, It's like a half hour. It's this long thing, and Bast flips his shit and is like, you need to appreciate music. There are intangible assets. There's things like even you ruin even this. You ruin everything. And he's like, whatever, man. It's like when Mrs. Joubert, as they call her in the audiobook, it's never pronounced right. Mrs. Joubert, like gets me outside and is like, look at these stars. There's no millionaire, and like I can hardly breathe because my head's against her boob and I can't even like see anything. And I'm just against her boob, being like, whatever, man. There's a millionaire behind everything, and like he's infected with it at that moment too.
Yeah.
Like they're all there. He's been infected with like parts of that language and parts of that replication via there, not just through his like capitalist craziness, but even like his reference to her, he sexualizes her inadvertently at like in a very small specific way.
Yeah, and like based off of what Brian just said, also of that like it's different. I feel like Rhoda's pacing is so much more different. Like everything for the men is like super, super hectic. And then she's Janice from the Muppets, like, hey man, like just give me my shirt, man. Have you seen the cat? It's like a shipwreck in here. Here, kitty. Like it's really slow.
Knock over my cocaine.
And one of my favorite parts is when Aiden's like trying to justify making moves on her, and she's basically like, why don't you just get one of those like water dolls, man? They say it's pretty lifelike. And like she's like go find a doll. You're sad and gross, and I have to go to this interview.
Their relationship on the phone too is amazing. There could be you could write a whole thesis on the phone. This also, like the section with Bast and JR, related to what we said a couple weeks ago, Brian, of like not knowing like the whole financial picture and like what happened with that, and someone probably has and they've tracked it down. That one is that section is where it all unfolds, where it's like they did this, all this doesn't work. You've failed in all these ways, and it's all seems to be, and I could be wrong, but listening to it, it's harder to track. It's very hard to track, like the business stuff, listening to it. But it feels like part of the reason that it all doesn't work out is that Bast sells his options and illegally, and then it's like insider trading, or like, and you can't use that to get money to buy stock, like that's illegal, and so he's like, oh, Jared's like, hey man, I gave you that so you didn't have to pay like the salary, man, and like they're gonna take like 53%, and now you can't take the $57,000, like you don't have that. I was saving you from the salary, and now like you're gonna go to jail. And he's like, well, what about you? And he's like, oh, I'm just a representative of the company, but you aren't, man. We fired you.
That's my favorite part. That is my favorite part.
Company anymore.
That's my favorite part. Like from that moment, like. Yeah, he's just like, here's all this stuff. And then JR's like, dude, you've been fired for like a week and a half. Like, you haven't worked for the company. And Bast is like basically on his deathbed and like trying to get back to Long Island. And then JR is still like, Bast is like, oh, that's fantastic. Like, I'm going to go to jail. It's done. Good. We can just stop all of this. And then it's like 25 pages.
No, man, you don't understand, man. Like we've got these pills that we can sell for 5 cents. We make them for 5 cents, but if we give them away, they're 25 cents at value. So we get like this write-off on our taxes, man. So like we've got this. It's like, shut up. And then there's a great part. JR's like, can you swallow? Like you're drooling on everything. Like you can't. Like, close your mouth and swallow. You're getting my paper wet. Like you're.
Why did you spit
on
it?
My God. This section, I was crying, but I was gonna say, you're talking about the Pynchon thing. And this is the section with these 3 scenes or more or less like the last two scenes when the marshals show up and then JR and Bast have their conversation in the limo, which is going somewhere, which I don't know that I remember where all that was
Train
headed.
station.
But like, wasn't the limo was hired for something else?
So the limos, from what I understood, like JR's tried to orchestrate this entire school trip so that he could get to New York City and see where the headquarters is. And then he's like super disappointed because it's this rundown dump of a place that has like all these people coming in and out of it because it's one apartment. And yeah, so he just like, I assumed he rented these limos on like the company money. And
it's Manhattan to Massapequa, Long Island, right?
Yeah, but then they won't take them back to Long Island because they're not authorized.
Yeah, and they're like, we can't. You're not authorized to do that. And meanwhile, the marshals are just like, you're gonna go to jail now. Like, you're all fucked, so fucked.
You know what was like super sad? Like, it's all funny and everything's funny, and again, it's funny in the realm of people having leukemia, sexual assault, like crippling drug addiction, and we're laughing about it because it's
probably the good leukemia. It was probably the good leukemia.
But obviously it's a satire, right? The thing to me that was so tragic in this one was like I've been on this like theme of like JR is the future of America. He is the promise of America. And what does this bright young mind, what does he end up becoming? How is he molded? How is he formed? And to me, like he has this moment with Bast where Bast is giving him this piece of Bach. And it's a piece where it's talking, like it's a conversation between Jesus Christ and the soul. It's like this, it's like deeply rich, important, artistic thing. And it's just, no, it's about the money and it's about the tits. And it's like, okay, he's lost, he's gone, that's where he's going. Screw art, commerce. It's dead, right? It's in a limousine, like, right? Like it's dead right there. And I think that's Gatta's kind of telling us this is where it's headed. Sorry, artists.
Yeah,
I also felt
like not intangible anymore.
Yeah, I also felt like that moment. What I thought was sad in those moments when JR and Bast are in the limo, is that Bast is like really sick and just on the at the end of his rope, and JR is like, "Hey man, holy shit, Mr. Bast, I thought that you and me could that we would just together." And like it's like this 12-year-old kid is like hit this Bast is his best friend under duress essentially, and like that it's maybe only a couple sentences where I started to get that sort of heartbreaky feeling, and then it goes straight into the funny part. But just this poor kid, not poor kid, but yeah, it is the money aspect, and it is the the getting all this wealth and riches and playing around with the stocks and the companies. But at the same time, it's also, I don't want to say a cry for help, but it is a cry for attention, but in a way that I don't even think JR, when he's 12, that JR doesn't even understand. He's just like, you and me, Bast, like I thought we had this thing, and I've been helping you and setting you up to be golden this entire time, and you just keep screwing me over, and you're fired, but like you're still my friend, so I'm just going to talk to you for the next hour and a half about everything I've learned, which like you can't quit now when we just figured out we've been doing it wrong this whole time. And Bast is like, oh no. no.
I like the part. There's two things that reminds me of. One is like the thing about the them being together as friends. There's some line that's basically like, but Bast, like I always thought we would be in a limo going down like a parade. We'd be the front of a parade. We'd be the ones, blah, blah, blah. Like this would be our time. And he's like, no. And the other thing is there's a moment in there towards the end where JR is like, if only I had started with the making money part. Like if I had started with the making money instead of writing off losses, this would have all worked out. And it's like, so going back again, so the Pynchon thing, and there's that scene in the beginning of Gravity's Rainbow where they go down the toilet.
Before you go on to that one, the thing that I also like about that conversation is it's a mirror or a bookend to that first conversation they have when they're walking at night, coming back from buying the diamond stock for the very first time. And so I think those two conversations are perfectly book-ended as far as how their arcs are in the book. It's really, really, really well done and really well placed. Gravity's Rainbow. Sorry, speaking of art, Gravity's Rainbow. Back to
We'll get there sooner or later. There's a scene early on where there's like they go down a toilet, and it represents like everything in America is just shit and money. Everything in America is shit and money. And this part reminds me, the whole book reminds me of that kind of thing in bits. But with these, especially those two last scenes, it feels like the illusion has been popped.
Mm-hmm.
So like when you say like it reminds you of Pynchon in a way, like there are those moments. Pynchon's books, I'm trying to think if I can think of a good example of this right now, but they like maintain that illusion the whole time, as if you can't ever quite know what's real and what's not real. Like Crying Lot 49.
That'd be the best example, especially with commerce, as far as commerce is concerned, right?
Yeah, and you never like it never, but this punctures that to the point like when the marshals are like explaining their things, and like, well, this is, I mean, the jig is up. The jig is up. Like at this moment, and they're like, yeah, we're here, we got these things, we got to find these people, where's Greenspan, where's this, blah blah blah. Against like, my wife left me, I don't know what's going on. It's like it's all been broken, and like this is the first time that like all the chaos, all the entropy, all the things that were like claustrophobic and funny are like someone else's eyes show up on there instead of the people who are part of it, who are like, I can't see the forest from the trees. I'm part of this. This is crazy. I'm just trying to get my thing. I just want blank. If I get blank, everything will work out. This will be fine. If I had the space, I'll write this book. It'll be great. My play will get produced. And this is the time where someone's like, do you guys even look around like at all? Cause like what you're living in is a nightmare and like filth. And like even JR is like, what, man, this guy keeps trying to call me about trying to get his spoons, and he's got this truck that's driving around in a block trying to get the spoons as part of our import export. Like everything's like a nightmare of like nobody being able to see outside of their own vision. And this is the time that all breaks for me. And that's why this is like the denouement climax moment of the book, is that it's the first time that you're like, yeah, it didn't work. The paper empire didn't work.
Yeah,
my stocks didn't go up this week.
It didn't go up this week. I had a note like to go off the Pynchon comparison, because you're talking about the paper. I really do like not just Rhoda's voice that slows down, but I felt like in this part of the apartment, the section before the apartment scene and this ending of the apartment scene, you've had all this chaos all over the place, and then you have so many of these players coming into the same small location, and they're just surrounded by detritus, and it feels very kind of like turned inside out in that sense, where everything kind of just comes together there. But the note that I made is that both the apartment as a stationary location, and then in a way JR also, like that I was back in the apartment and reading, back in the Gibbs's apartment in the book and reading it, and the first thing that came to mind was I think it is Bleak House, but the Dickens, the character Crook and the spontaneous combustion, like the old man who has all these all this just like detritus, and I think it was papers and newspapers. They said he's like a rag man or something like that, but and that it just made me think of that, of like people sitting in this space where you have all this incoming garbage, and eventually it's just gonna spontaneously combust. It's gonna explode. And in that sense, JR is kind of like a walking time bomb. Like he's carrying this crap with him, all these papers and all these things, and like I can't get the sense of Dickens out of my mind because specifically the paper element, and just like. So yeah,
I just looked it up, and it is.
It sounded better when it was in my head.
Bleak House does have the spontaneous combustion. Also, Dickens's belief in spontaneous combustion sparked a whole debate in London when he included that as to whether it's possible or not. Like it's sort of like half real, half invented.
Yeah, I think it's the first literary instance of spontaneous combustion.
Yes. That's what this thing says too.
Yeah. So and that's what I thought of just like you have all these people in that space where that could happen, but the one player who would be the person to spontaneously combust by like JR in that sense is like wandering around and just like havoc.
Yeah.
It sounded better in my head, but I can't unsee that connection now. Also, because I don't really see the Pynchon connection. I've only read one Pynchon book.
One of the funniest parts of this to me is where Bass is like laying into JR and he's like, there was one good radio station. There's one good radio station.
Yes,
and
yeah.
I'm listening to the people that want that music. These people deserve to have their music. There's not a lot of them. They deserve to have their music. And now I turn it on and it's just like JR and a company of families, the JR profile bringing to you by her magazine or she magazine. And he's like, you ruined radio. Why do you have to ruin everything?
Yeah. And that's, I'm gonna steal it back and say I took notes on that. But the thing I liked about that was because that's like such a realistic dialogue sense where, and I do have it written down. Oh shoot, where Bass is like, okay, nothing, it's the whole thing, the whole rotten thing. It's a perfect example, even if you can't understand it. The one station that played music, great music left in the whole loud, cheap, pounding stupidity of radio. You find it and make it cheap and stupid. But like the section right before that where he's saying like you were saying, sorry, that was the wrong quote. Anyway, where Chad, you were saying like the end of it where Bast is like waxing about the wonders of this radio station. And then at the very end, he's like, blah, blah. Oh shit, you got that too, didn't it? Like, didn't you? Like, damn it. Like at that moment, as you're talking, being like, come on, man, it's just everything. Your fingers in every single pot.
You ruin everything.
Yeah, everything. And just that little moment of like, oh, like, I don't know if it was oh hell or oh shit, but you're just like, yup, like he catches it and he's like, God damn it.
I think JR's holy shits stand out in the audiobook version in ways that are like amazing.
Holy Mr. Bass.
Holy shit. And then Bass is like, don't say holy shit.
Yep. No, keep saying it. It's great.
I love listening to that. Like on a new level. Like I think I probably should have started listening somewhere in the middle and had half of this read, half of it listened to, since I've read it before. And kind of know where all of this goes more or less. Like it doesn't work. I mean, I don't know if that's like spoiler alert, shit's not gonna work out. You know, but listening to it is super fun. Like it's super fun. It literally is a performance. It's a performance of this book. It's not reading it. It's not interpreting it. It is performing it voice by voice, section by section, and hearing like the part that I always would glance through. I mean, there's a whole discussion that could be had about like what the process is of reading and understanding when you use your eyes versus when you use your ears. Like that is probably some other thesis of someone's, but the I part when like Alsaka instead of Alaska, the part where JR can't pronounce subsidiary, he can't pronounce like tete-a-tete, he can't pronounce there's some other one like subpoena, he can't get subpoena right. And he's like, I just haven't had that yet. And in the voice when it's being read, it's very funny where he's like, our subsidiary, and then like, and if they subpoena it, if they subpoena these tapes, we need to have these tapes. We need to hear what they are before they subpoena them. And they like, it's so that part, all the mistakes stand out in a way. And this ties into like a Claude Shannon thing that I wanted to talk about a few weeks ago. Claude Shannon was one of the people from AT&T or Bell, whatever. I think it was Bell at that point in time, Bell Laboratories, who worked on how to prevent loss in communication. So he came up with a mathematical theory for like when you talk on the phone, how much was being lost in the line, like what the crackles were, how much information just doesn't make it through when I call you physically on a phone line, primarily by like physical technology and physics of like there's a degradation of the sound. There is an entropy that's built into the system. And then as it turns out, his sort of like mathematical formula also applies to like just generally the idea, like you can apply it to the idea of like, I say a certain thing, X percentage of it will never make it to you. It'll always be lost. And like his job at that time was essentially to figure out how to reduce that loss, reduce that entropy. And it's all based in like making redundancies, having things be repeated. You repeat things, you have a second system, you have a way that like, so 70% gets through on system 1 and system 2, that means that there's like only a 0.9%, or there's a 9% chance that something didn't get through if you did that twice, but there's a 30% chance if you did it once. Like there's like all that kind of idea of like duplication, of redundancy, of whatever, but that entropy is always built in there. And this book reminds me of that in every way. And hearing that voice where he's mispronouncing it and it's not getting through, and it's not getting through from the paper to his mind. It's not getting through from his mind to like, he's even saying things in Bass is like, do you even know what that means? And he's like, no, like we haven't learned those words yet. Like we haven't gotten that in vocab class. Like that level of it is so hysterically funny. And I think that the thing about what you're saying, Brian, where it's like they're offensive people, they're toxic dudes, they're horrible dudes. Making jokes about leukemia is not cool. Like, but nevertheless, or making jokes about rape, not cool. Although we haven't made any of those yet, and won't. But like,
that's not a yes statement. Just not happening.
Just went over there, yeah. But like acknowledging these scenes and laughing about them is in some sense because that part of like the brokenness is already built into the system.
Yeah. And I'm not comfortable talking with like the amount of racism in this book is insane, right? And it's obviously it's extremely satirical as well. But I think Gaddis is pointing out like the gigantic warts and moles that are throughout our system, our capitalist system, is like it's all in his book. It's very clearly he's pro art, and art is just getting shit on continuously in this book.
It's interesting because this has a point about like even if it's great art that only appeals to a few people, it deserves to be there.
Yeah.
And that's the quote unquote thesis of the article that I tried to write for this Cambridge anthology recently that I don't know if it will ever come out. But it part of one section of it is about like that thing that instead of being driven by like the popularity and the numbers and the reach and the money and all that there are audiences that deserve and want this art, and they aren't profitable. They aren't like, it's not something that makes sense in a business way, in a JR way. Like you can't write it off, even you can't do anything, but they deserve that art because there is something beautiful and intangible about art and about books like this that add up to more than what they are. Like this book is proof of concept in the sense that like this is something that is only for a certain number of people.
Which makes Mr. Difficult, the whole Mr. Difficult Franzen contract argument so hilarious that he's using this book for that.
Yeah.
Dude, you just do not get it then. You got it so completely wrong. That is amazing.
The number of people who have written to this podcast and written to me or texted me or DM'd me in relation to that article and being like, oh, I totally agree that Franzen, now that I've read this, Franzen's a piece of shit. Like that's the thing that like Franzen fucked up royally.
And it's so wrong that it's like, it's perfect. It's perfect. Like you can't parody it. It's so bad.
Literally cannot parody it. And his new book cover came out this week. The Franzen new book cover. That's a new book thing that happened, Brian. Your beginning thing. Looks dumb.
Okay, cool.
Looks dumb.
I'm sure I'll see a top 10 Franzen covers.
I think Emily Temple already put together a listicle about that. Perfect.
Looking forward to it.
It's all
we'll read it. I read all that stuff.
So I don't know. Is there anything else that you guys wanted to talk about in this section? Otherwise, I can make the announcement of what our next book is, which you don't even know yet, Brian.
Let's get to the announcements. I'm excited.
I wanted to talk, guys.
Please.
Don't try to muffle my voice. As the woman on this week's podcast, I believe that I have some agency. I should have some agency. Well, you guys were talking about the racism. I thought you were going to go straight into like Bass trying to go bring these like hundreds of washing machines to this. Was it a town or is it official? Is a reservation? No,
it's a reservation.
But I like that like everything just goes wrong, and Bass like, yeah, because they don't have fucking electricity. And JR's like, what? Everyone has electricity. Like this is like how does this not work? And then like JR's like trying to wrap his head around that, and meanwhile Bast is like, the son of the guy who you were in touch with like lost his mind and was like waving guns around and stuff. And it's not my most favorite line, but one of my favorite lines where JR's like, holy, but like, did you know he was gonna like do that or something and Bast is like, well, somebody finally got him with a shovel. Like someone just took care of him. Like out. Like it's this.
But that was a racist.
So much happening, and like so, like the 3 scenes, and it really is 3 big scenes, but it's so great because they're all these little. It's like I think one of you said it, like it's unraveling, or Chad, you said it's unraveling at this point, and so you're getting all these, little tidbits like, oh, someone got him with a shovel, and like this and that, and like it's so good. It's so good.
This is related to that, and this is the racism. It's Native American racism. So you, Brian, are a target of said racism. Why not smash everything? Charlie Yellowbrook in that smashed Cadillac waving a pint bottle, telling me the earth is his mother, telling me corn is a god, talking about water thanking me for trying to money him, weeping in his omelet before his heart attack. George wondering what they said that part of like Charlie Yellowbrook is the name of the Indian chief. That Bash shows up in like full headdress to give them washing machines and dryer and shit that has come from the school that they buy, which is a whole nother part that we haven't talked about, is that JR buys the school and has a great line where he's like, you know who wins? Fucking banks. Banks always win. They take like a bit of everything. You take every bit of everything. It's like, I should have started with a bank. I should have a bank buying a bank. I could have had more banks. It would have been perfect. Like instead, this is what's happened. But we have this school because there's this like referendum. They don't want to pay for it, so they just give it to us. You know, we're just getting payback goodies from the school.
Yeah, that's it. But like, it wasn't that. Yeah. But it's not Bast who I'll go back. Bast showed up in a suit, and then the PR people there were like, oh no, you have to be one with the, with the people.
Yeah.
Like he didn't want to wear that, and they got it at the dollar store, and he's like, it was a size 8. What do you expect?
Yeah, the comedy of this book is just. It's so good. It keeps giving. It just keeps giving.
Brian, you didn't get it. If you didn't watch last week's episode or listen to it, there is a play version that exists.
Yeah, you sent me that article or the link to it. So I'm really excited for that.
So let's do the announcement and then favorite lines, which I'm going to have a hard time with since I didn't mark a single thing. I just listened. But the next season, what I would like to do, what we're going to do, assuming that you don't just veto me here, Brian, is to do the 3 volumes of Virginie Despentes' Vernon Subutext.
Oh, yeah.
The 3rd volume comes out in May. So take a month off and then do them 1, 2, 3. And my plan for anyone listening that wants to participate is that we will have the same guests on 3 times. We'll have the same number of guests for volume 1, volume 2, volume 3. I think that's going to be basically like 5. I think there'll be space for 5 guests to come on each volume and talk about where they are with it in that volume. So if someone wants to participate and is a fan of Vernon Subutext, which is it's a wonderfully fun, amazing trilogy about like a down and out record store owner who loses his record store, but has these tapes that from a musician accusing a bureaucratic record label of bad activity, of being like bad people. And then there's like all these characters that sort of like bump into each other randomly on the outskirts of France, on the outskirts of Paris, and the outskirts of the country. And it is, in Derek Main's words, which are very, very accurate, it is a gen sort of like dream utopia.
Is it the same translator for all 3 volumes?
It is the same translator for all 3 volumes.
Oh, it was? Okay.
He's an amazing translator as well.
Frank Wynn.
Yes.
Very
She's
cool.
great.
She kicks ass.
Well, I am very much looking forward to it.
They're so good. So the third one, I got the galley in the other day and was like, this is what we need to do. We need to do these 3 because they're like nice to go back. They're so fun. They're so fun. The thing that I think is interesting and contrasting as a preview, as a prelude, is that the difference between Gaddis and these books is that Gaddis is all voice, like you said, Kaija, all like natural voice. It's very like Balzacian and empirical, Aristotelian, like what is there. And the Vernon Subutex, every section is like a narrative from this like stylized, cold, reserved sort of like way of representing who these characters are, and gives each character, each chapter is more or less a character piece on like what the flaws and the good things are about this person. And so there's like a distance, and a semi-ironic distance that ends up being like really cutting, really sharp, really funny, saying a lot of things that we all agree with or feel, but is through the lens of like a singular voice in the end, versus JR, which is like so many voices and exploded. This is very much the same voice from bit to bit, but the characters have changed. So it's a nice like counterpoint.
Cool.
So favorite lines from this week? Anyone? I'm gonna just pick whatever the fuck comes up here.
Brian, do you have one cute or no?
Yeah, just a quick one. It's on the NYRB version. It's on page 660.
Oh, come on, don't do this. Okay.
Look, Jack, what the hell are you trying to tell you I'm going to die? it's that right there. You won't let him get a word, and he's like, I just want to tell somebody I'm dying. Will somebody listen?
So mine is from the Delkey edition, also page 660. That's why I got a little worried.
That's cool.
And it's just a fragment, but JR is like complaining about all this stuff, and it just ends with like we can charge them what we want and squeeze them out anytime we want. Is it my fault that's what franchising is?
Oh my god. There's a Stanley Elkin book called The Franchiser that you should read after this too. For anyone who's looking for like post JR recommendations that aren't in this vein but are like related in some way, The Franchiser by Stanley Elkin is definitely, it is one of my favorite scenes of all literature, where this I think it's a grandfather, it might be a father, gifts his son / grandson the prime rate of interest. They can borrow as much money as he ever wants, and it'll always be at the prime rate. Like there's no additional, no one's going to grift him. There's no grift. And he's like, do you realize how special you are to have this? He's like literally like, your dad came and it was like a sea of possible people that were just like inside your mom. Like you were like, if you imagine like the grains of sand on like a beach, there's like a trillion, there's not a trillion, there's 100 million trillion. There's like trillions of possibilities that you could have been. Like your grain of sand made it and you became a person. Like, you know how fucking unbelievable that is, that you are the one person here. You could have been any number of other things. Like your dad literally tried to make you other things. Like it's so good. But it's about a guy who franchises hotels and ice cream and various other things. My favorite line that I open to ties into all of this, and also reminds me of a Car Seat Headrest song, is on 699. No, but holy shit, Bast. I mean, that's what you do. These here Indians, is it my fault they think corn is this here God? They don't even have electricity. Is it my fault if I didn't get these here leases off them and leave them stay there? Somebody else is going to screw them out of the whole thing. Is it my fault if I do something first, which if I don't do it, somebody else is going to do it anyways? I mean, come on. Everybody's always getting mad at me.
That's where mine ends up from. Like, is it my fault? That's what franchising is.
How am I supposed to know? How was I supposed to know? So the Car Seat Headrest reference is facetious, but in Teens of Style or Teens of Denial album, there's a song in which the refrain is mostly, or the verses are mostly spoken, and there's one part where like it just is like, how was I supposed to know about any of this? How was I supposed to know not to do this? How was I supposed to know not to do any of these things? And in this case, JR really wasn't supposed to know that these aren't wrong. He's a child.
Yeah.
Like, you can't forget that he's just a child who's like, no, man, we like just moved these $30 million, man. Holy shit, man. Like, we got these 30 million. We got these. I don't want them to have insurance that they're paying to someone else. I want to own the insurance. Like, holy shit, man. Like, we can make this happen. Like, that's amazing. He's not supposed to know that it's all. He's a child.
This is like the purest example of don't hate the player, hate the game.
I can see in your prayers it's the same things we pay for. Got a currency that you accept. If you want to exchange, we can try to connect. Give me the number to your room and leave the door on the latch. There are tigers in